So today it is our honor and pleasure to be joined by the President Elect of the Central Tibetan Administration, also known as the Government of Tibet in Exile. In a time of great geopolitical turmoil in the region, this is of great relevance. After one of the most successful democratic exercises for a diaspora, for an exile community, we are joined by the holder of a public office, which is also known as the Sikyong, which is the equivalent of Prime Minister or President. And first of all, congratulations, Mr. Penpa Tsering. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. And
thank you very much.
Let's go into the question that is on almost every observer's mind. So you have indicated a desire to resume the dialogue that the Central Tibetan Administration was having with the CCP in the People's Republic of China, which was stemming from what is called the middle way approach. Rather predictably, China has also reacted very negatively to your election. Given the fact that we now also have hardening Sino-Indian relations, they're becoming more volatile as we speak. Is this a challenge for you? Do you find yourself potentially having to navigate a very delicate balancing act?
So whenever we talk about dealing with the Communist Party of China or the government of China, it is always very challenging at all times. It's not just this time. Of course, right now we all can see that China is being very belligerent, not only towards India, which is more warlike posture, but in other areas in South China Sea and East China, with Japan, Taiwan, all its neighboring countries, and also countries far beyond in Europe and North America. So this is, of course, a very challenging time, and outwardly it appears the posture of the Chinese government is not very convincing to the world that they are willing to engage or they are willing to be responsible global power. The only reason that I can see is that they are trying to protect themselves at this time of pandemic when there are economic upheavals around the world, and they could be danger to the power and position of the Communist Party. So every time there is a danger like this, we can see that China is trying to evoke nationalism within its rank and file. So that seems to be the only reason why they are being so belligerent. So it is definitely very challenging for us. But at the same time, the reality of the situation, particularly concerning Sino-Tibet conflict, is that the Tibet issue can be resolved only by talking with the Chinese government. That is the reality. Whether the Chinese are willing to listen right now, or whether common sense will prevail on them in the eventual times, that is something that we have to look at. But from our side, from His Holiness side, we have consistently been reaching out to the Chinese government. Now, whether we like it or not, we can't have a Hanuman to lift Tibet out of that area and put it somewhere else. Tibet and China were neighbors since time immemorial, since this universe came into being, just like Tibet and India were neighbors. So as neighbors, we should learn to live in peace and in cordiality with each other, in harmony with each other. That is what the Chinese government has always been saying. But when you say to live in harmony, you have to say verbally and also in practice. You have to practice that. So what the Chinese government is doing right now is not practicing what they preach. So we will make our efforts, we will make our overtures. That has to be the norm in terms of our relationship with China. And we firmly believe that middle way approach, which is mutually beneficial both for China and Tibet, is also beneficial for the whole geopolitical region. If the Tibet issue could be resolved, there could be better relations between China and India also, whose neighbors started only after China occupied Tibet. So that relationship is also very important. His Holiness has said many times that China and India are the most populous nations in the world, and we always appreciate good relations between China and India. But that has to be reciprocal. It cannot be one-sided. So therefore, we will put in every effort to reach out to the Chinese government and prevail upon them that this is the best way forward, not only for Chinese and the Tibetan people, but for the whole region.
So that is, your optimism is inspiring, and I certainly hope it will be reciprocated. You did mention burgeoning nationalism in China and areas obviously controlled by China. Our colleagues have seen domestic security budgets for places like Tibet and East Turkestan or Xinjiang. They have gone up by almost 400% in a 10-year frame. However, rather disturbingly, particularly right now, we see a renewal of religious repression within Tibet. As you are more than aware, this is the holy month of Sagadawa. It is interesting to see the Chinese repress personal religious practice in the name of COVID, all the while denying that COVID even exists in the Tibetan plateau. Considering, if we were to take a long-term perspective, considering that the refugee flow from Tibet into India has stemmed as borders gotten more militarized, how will the Central Tibetan Administration preserve Tibetan religion, culture, and identity within Tibet? It almost seems as if there is a race on China's part to completely sinicize and alter the region.
Yeah, one of the major concerns is the larger issue of sinification or Sinicization of Tibet. And that is being done at various levels. The most concerning is the demographic aggression. Over the last many decades now, we have seen that more and more Chinese are moving into Tibet. We all know that Tibet's landmass is almost quarter of China's landmass.
Of course.
But the Tibet's population is only 6 million compared to that of 1.4 billion in China. So it's very challenging for us because of the demographic aggression. I have always said that we are not against multiculturalism. We appreciate multiculturalism. It's happening all over the world. People move from place to place, and you have various cultures coming together. It's a melting pot of cultures in many different parts of the world. But when a majority, one single majority community completely overwhelms a national minority, then it amounts to cultural genocide. So over and above the demographic aggression, you talked about religious freedom. We have seen over the years from Mao Zedong's time to Deng Xiaoping to Jiang Zemin to Hu Jintao to now President Xi Jinping, that there have been more and more curbs on the religious freedom of the numbers of people. And monks in the monasteries have gone down. There is much more surveillance in the monasteries. Now the management committees are filled by local officials, communist officials. Now the most concerning, of course, is the recognition of reincarnation of lamas. So these are all ways and means by the Chinese government, besides control over the Tibetan language. I always say we are an extension of Indian culture, whether it's to do with language or whether it's to do with the Tibetan Buddhism that is derived from India. So language has also become just a study of language. Tibetan as a medium has been abolished. Chinese language is imposed on the Tibetan, and even if you study Tibetan, it's very difficult to get jobs and make a living. So likewise, the more concerning issue is also the environmental issue of Tibet, because Tibet is very fragile. You know, it's the roof of the world. What people call is, we call ourselves land surrounded by snow mountains. Westerners call it roof of the world. Asians call it water tower of Asia. So all these, it's not just one single issue that concerns us, it's multiple issues. So my job would be to point out to the Chinese government the policies and programs that they are following right now inside Tibet is not beneficial for China, for the Tibetan people, and for the whole geopolitical region, and make corrections wherever possible. That would be an effort till we are able to reach a lasting solution for the Tibetan issue or the Sino-Tibetan conflict.
So you also raised the question of direct religious interference. You talked about as the selection of lamas, for example. I mean, it has become a part of Chinese legislation, rather ironically, for a state that professes to be atheist. The question now that was, of course, on everybody's mind, partially thanks to Chinese posturing, is the question of the 15th Dalai Lama. While, of course, His Holiness has made it very clear as to that the process will be outside of Chinese control, it seems more than inevitable that there will be a dispute in the future. In 2011, as you already know, His Holiness relinquished his temporal power to the office of Sekyong, an office that you will assume on 26th of May. So that begets the question, what role would a future 15th Dalai Lama play for Tibet? Will it be like that of a state figurehead? Will it be purely religious? What do you foresee for the future?
Now, the relationship between the successive Dalai Lamas and the Tibetan people is very, very unique. So, His Holiness, being His Holiness the Dalai Lama, has certain inherent responsibilities. Those are outlined in the Charter of the Tibetans here in Exile. When I was the Speaker of the Parliament, we amended that. And that will continue to be a guiding force behind the role of the 15th Dalai Lama also. So as far as the reincarnation is concerned, this is completely up to His Holiness, the individual of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, because he's the one who's going to be reincarnated.
Of course.
I think His Holiness, I remember His Holiness also saying, if the Chinese government is so very keen, first they should, from my personal side also, I believe that first they should respect the 14th Dalai Lama who's here now, rather than being more concerned about the reincarnation of the 15th Dalai Lama. And we all believe that His Holiness will live up to the age of 113 years. So there is no rush in talking about this. But every time we have foreign delegations going into China, it seems more like the Chinese government is more concerned about this issue. So Chinese government being a communist government who doesn't believe in religion, it's really a paradox and irony that the complete irreligious or people who don't believe in religion want to be responsible for reincarnation. So they should learn the concept of rebirth and all that. And I remember His Holiness joking about this. If they are really serious about reincarnation, then they should look for Mao Zedong's reincarnation first. Once they do that, then they can be more responsible. But then they have to understand the Buddhist concept because this is a purely religious issue, and it's fully, completely Tibetan Buddhist concept. So unless you don't believe in the system of reincarnation, then you can't be responsible for recognition of reincarnation.
Of course. So, sir, you pointed out that one of your responsibilities, of course, is accountability for Chinese actions within Tibet. We find ourselves, of course, in a rather unique state globally with the onslaught of the Wuhan origin, COVID-19, Chinese transgressions as far as the Uyghur community is concerned. Some have called it a genocide. The world is aware. And you also had warlike tensions with India, issues in the Indian Ocean. You see the rise of the Quad right now. There seems to almost be global tension as far as China is concerned. Do you find, while assuming this office, this is perhaps an opportune time for the CTA to perhaps be able to leverage some of its goals as far as accountability in Tibet is concerned? is there an opportunity, in your opinion, because of all these issues?
This is definitely the reason why every single one of you who study China and concerned about security issues are reaching out to me is not because I have achieved a lot of things in my life. It's because of the situation that has arisen out of China's actions. So the reason why the U.S. State Department is wishing me, or the reason why the Taiwanese foreign minister is wishing me, are direct consequences of China's actions. So this is purely, this signifies that how much China is being responsible to the world. So this is a reaction of the world towards China's irresponsibility. What we really hoped for many decades, that once China becomes part of the World Trade Organization or multilateral forums, then China would be more responsible. But unfortunately, it has adverse reaction on Chinese leadership. That's very unfortunate, and I really hope that China will. The common sense will prevail on the Chinese leadership that this is not the way to create good relations with its neighbors. Therefore, as I mentioned before, also that whatever they are doing inside China, inside Tibet, not just inside Tibet, what they are doing in Uyghur, what they are doing in Mongolia, what they are doing in Hong Kong, and their posture towards China, Taiwan, and all these does not add up to what they profess to do, to be a responsible global leader or to create a new global order. So in that sense, inside Tibet, our main responsibility is to point out the wrong policies and programs and make them accountable for what they are doing. Because you, as politicians, as leaders, you don't. If you are a real statesman, then you should not be looking just for immediate gains. You should be looking for long-term gain that creates better relations between the people and the government and the people, and that is not happening right now. And we really hope that Chinese leadership becomes aware of this and then become more responsible and accountable to not just to the Tibetan people, but to its own people. Not keep them in the dark, keep them freedom of information, let them understand what is going on, and let them make their own decision. You don't expect few people to make decision and everybody to follow that. By saying, "Oh, this is an Asian concept. This is with Chinese characteristics all the time." I don't think you can get away with that in the longer term.
Of course, very poignant. So to conclude this interview, I would like to give you the floor for a minute or so. If you have any message for an Indian audience or even a Tibetan audience or global audience, perhaps what you plan to highlight in the next few months, what is your priority, perhaps?
To the Tibetans, I have been speaking a lot in Tibetan also. So for the Indians, to the Indian leaders and to the Indian public, we remain forever grateful for what India has done to us. Our traditional relationship has been Guru Chela. We are the Chelas, you are the Gurus. And the kind of the nature of the help that the Indian government and the people of India has extended to us in terms of human issues, and also now political issues are becoming more important. And I think realization is setting in within the Indian political and the think tank circles that the policies that Indian government has been following over the decades in terms of China is not going anywhere, and there has to be a more pragmatic approach to that, and that Tibet's issue should not be used only as a leverage, but the Tibet issue need to be resolved. And for that, India can be can play a very, very proactive role. I cannot advise the Indian government. I am too naive for that. That would be too naive on my part. But then, I look forward to a much more fruitful and proactive relationship with the Indian government, and also with the US government, who has played a leading role in pushing the Tibet conflict, Sino-Tibet conflict forward by through numerous ways, particularly in terms of legislation, the Tibet Policy Act, and we intend to work very closely with the US government, with all other like-minded countries in Europe and other countries where they value freedom, they value democracy, they value humanity as a whole. So that is something that I really look forward to. They have extended so much help to us, humanitarian, financial, political. So that I really look forward to. And thank you very much for giving this opportunity.
On that note, sir, on behalf of all of us at Global Order, thank you very much for all your insights and your time. We wish you the very best with your forthcoming term.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ishan. Thank you.
I'll just